Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin. You know, the show where I virtually invite people into the Blog Cabin to chat about life. And today we are chatting about some of my favorite things, that is gardening and being spiritual. And with me today is Andy. He is the author of The Spiritual Gardener, Insights from the Jewish Tradition to Help Your Garden Grow. So welcome, Andy. Before we get into your book, tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me, Melissa. I live in Western Washington with my wife and our two lovely dogs, Splash and Nova. My wife has kindly taken them out to the dog park so we don't hear Nova barking at the geese today. So we have good sound. And basically, we've been in our present place about 25 years. I was a frustrated gardener for many, many years. But where we're living now, we have nice, loamy, sandy soil, a pretty flat yard. I've got a bunch of vegetable beds. I've got blueberries and raspberries along two different fences. And then a friend helped me build a greenhouse because here by the Salish Sea in the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle area, we're challenged with pretty short summers. So the greenhouse is wonderful because it extends the growing season in both directions. I like to do mostly peppers, cucumbers, and tomatoes in the greenhouse, but I do all my flowers by seeds. I'll do the plants that I'm going to transfer out of the greenhouse into the yard. I start them in the greenhouse. And those include, your sunflowers. I have a lot of zinnia right now. That's a flower that seems to survive the bunnies. Marigolds don't get eaten by, we just have a bunny epidemic going on right now and have had for a few years. We have a lot of deer too, but I have some fencing that helps with that. I like cosmos because they last a long time and extend here even into October. They're flowering now, and that's quite nice. So, vegetables and flowers and berries and making jam. That's what I like to do. And I've been writing books now for about 6 years. I have 5 books out. My most popular one is The Spiritual Gardener, the one you mentioned. And just happy to be here, answer any questions your audience might be interested in or you've thought of from, and thank you for looking at the book and your kind words.
Yeah. So first of all, you mentioned rabbits and you mentioned deer. They both have chapters in the book. So I want to mention that right off hands because you literally wrote chapters just about the deer and those darn rascally rabbits.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a chapter called Damn Wabbits. And it's, just part of our world that we're going to have creatures of all different kinds who want to get into our garden. I think we have an illustration for this one, if you can see that. This book is illustrated, and this wonderful lady, Abigail Drapkin, she has a master's in fine arts from the University of Washington. I was so lucky to find her. So you have to kind of live with, your squirrels, your deer, your rabbits. What I do is I put on my raised beds, I get pretty inexpensive wood, and I make basically just squares, frames, and then I attach bird netting to the outside of the frame so I can move the frame on and off as I'm doing my weeding during the growing season, or I'm doing my harvesting. And unless those rabbits figure out how to work together and lift up these frames so one can crawl underneath, I'm protected from the rabbits. And it also protects my dogs. Our two dogs are escape artists and thieves. So we have a fence yard to try and keep them in. They escape anyway.
Yeah.
They don't go very far. They know where their meal ticket lies. But they are thieves, and they're always on the lookout, like many dogs, for food. So with that fencing, I'm protecting not just the rabbits from, I don't have to be Mr. McGregor being mad about the rabbits.
Yeah.
In the book, before I figured out this temporary lift on, lift off fencing, I talk about one neighbor 2 doors down who was actually leaving out food on his patio for the rabbits. And, naturally, as the person who didn't want the rabbits around, that caused me some consternation with the neighbor. So that's in the book too.
Yeah. Well, why did you decide to take the Jewish tradition and combine it with gardening to write this book? Because this is such a unique take on the gardening book.
Well, thank you. It is unique, and there aren't any books quite like this. There are some books talking about biblical plants in the Jewish tradition, plants mentioned in the Old Testament, olives, figs, those kind of foods. But I've been gardening for years and years and years. And I've also been Jewish my whole life, and I got into my own spirituality, I would say, in a heavier way. It waxes and wanes, but in a much heavier way. So what the purpose of the book is to encourage gardening. So I took two very ancient traditions, Judaism or spirituality, that's my spiritual tradition, and gardening, which has been along with us for millennia. So I took those two traditions and I put them together with my own personal experiences here in Gig Harbor, Washington, scratching at the dirt, successes and failures every year, and made a book that I thought would hopefully inspire people to stick with their gardening, to get out in the garden, to make friends with an earthworm, to hear the birds tweeting. There's just so much fun in gardening, so much rewards for it. There's all these studies that I found out when I did the research for this book that gardening, especially for seniors, is very, very healthy. There's even a study out of, I think it's either England or Australia maybe, but there is a study, you could find it if you search for it, that says gardening actually lowers the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's by some great percentage. But gardeners know this. When we go out to garden, we don't say, "Hey, honey, I'll be out in the yard so I can go lower my risk of dementia by 40%. It's not that at all. We're drawn to going outside. We're drawn to the garden. We want to be part and participate in the beauty of creation. It's like the seed. The seed has to nullify itself in order to become the seedling. It has a hard shell. That shell has to decompose. It has to break itself down in order to become that seedling and transform itself into its intended purpose, its higher purpose. Well, the same way with human beings. Sometimes we have to nullify ourselves to reach our full potential, our full purpose in life. So there's so many lessons like that we can glean from just our own home garden, growing vegetables or growing flowers.
So, when did you get the idea to write this book? Did it just automatically pop in your head, or was it like years and years of struggle and you're like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write this book now?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about that, but I'd say it's like this. I always wanted to be a writer. In my sophomore year in college, I actually wrote a novel. It's in a storage chest in our basement. And if we ever open up that chest in that storage closet in our basement, I'm going to have to find that novel and either burn it or shred it because I'm sure it's not any good. I haven't looked at it in 50 plus years. But I always wanted to be a writer. And then life happens, you end up going to work. You have a vocation or a profession. You have a partner. You have children. And life goes on. You have to provide. And it was only really as I started cutting back on my work life that I was able to turn to what I always wanted to do, which was write. And they say you should write what you know about. So what I knew about was gardening because I'd been doing it for so many years. I mean, literally 3 decades. And spirituality because I'd really gotten into that. And I was reading a lot there's so much Jewish literature beyond the Torah, the Talmud, the Midrash. The Torah is the 5 books of Moses. The Talmud is the oral tradition that finally got written down, the Babylonian Talmud. And then the Midrash or biblical traditional stories interpreting the Bible. So beyond that, there's so much commentary and other books that I was, reading nightly, a lot of Jewish literature. So I took those 2 things that I knew and combined them into the Spiritual Gardener book. And the first title for the book was The Beneficent Garden. But my editor nixed that where said nobody knows what that means. So my title and my subtitle got changed quite radically very quickly in the editing process. But I'm very grateful for my illustrator, Abigail Drapkin, for my editor, for these books, the proofreading, the designer, all the help that I got that went into these books, because I know that people who want to start gardening or they've moved and they've got a new yard, or people have been gardening on and off for a while, they pick up this book and it's just, the feedback I get is so positive, it makes it all worthwhile.
I like how in the book that you compare gardening to some of the things that humans go through in their life. And I think that's really important because when you start applying things in gardening to situations you might run into in life, you're like, oh my gosh, it was that simple solution, but you don't really think about it when you apply it like that.
Yeah, I mean, a good example is my chapter on horseradish. Let me tell you about horseradish a little bit. Horseradish in the Jewish tradition represents bitterness. So, example, on the Passover holiday, we all eat the bitter herb to remind us of the bitterness of slavery. And I remember as a little kid around the Seder table where my grandparents and the great uncles and aunts would actually eat a piece of raw horseradish, and the tears would come down their faces, his kids, and then our parents and uncles and aunts and stuff wouldn't quite go for the raw horseradish, but still horseradish represents bitterness. Horseradish is really easy to grow in sandy soil. It's a conversation starter because it makes these big leaves that almost look tropical. It's amazing how big the horseradish plant gets very, very quickly. but it's an insidious plant. Its roots don't just go down, its roots go in all different directions. Now, to make horseradish, you dig up the roots, you spray off all the dirt you can, then you just use a potato peeler, and it's so easy to throw into a blender or a Ninja or a Cuisinart, whatever you pick. Add a little water, add a little vinegar. You could add some nice red beet. That brings a little sweetness. And how long you grind it and how much you add to it will determine how spicy hot it's going to be. One caveat, if you're going to make horseradish on your own, open all the windows and maybe wear gloves and don't touch your nose or eyes or anything on your face while you're making it. But it's fun to give a jar of horseradish as a present to your friends, relatives, neighbors. It's kind of a surprise present. It's so easy to make. But here's the thing about growing horseradish. And I want all your listeners to take this to heart, Melissa. If you grow horseradish and you don't confine it, your beautiful garden is going to become a horseradish farm. Why? Because it grows in all directions and then starts popping up. And if you try and dig it up and you don't get every single little piece of that root, it'll come back year after year in all sorts of new places. So the trick to growing horseradish, if you do want to make your own, and I highly encourage it because it's fun, is to confine it. So what's the spiritual lesson here? Well, the spiritual lesson is we're all going to have bitterness in our lives. There's no way to avoid it. Maybe it's with your parents, maybe it's with your kids, maybe it's with a brother, a sister, a more distant family member, maybe a coworker, a neighbor, an employee, the boss. We're all going to have bitterness in our lives. We live in a country now where we're so polarized and divided. There's bitterness. How much bitter, you can just turn on the TV and listen to all the vitriol. I'm not recommending that. I'm recommending you turn off the TV and go outside and get in the garden. But the point is, we're all going to have bitterness in our lives. What's the spiritual lesson when we do have bitterness in that one relationship? Confine it. Don't let that bitterness grow from one sibling to the next sibling, from one child to all your children or all your grandchildren. You have to confine that bitterness. Well, in my spiritual tradition, Judaism, we have times to do that. We have the weekly Shabbos, the weekly Sabbath, where we have a time to meditate and pray and think about the week that passed and the week to come. So that's the lesson of horseradish. We want bitterness in our lives. If we didn't have bitterness in our lives, we wouldn't fully comprehend the sweetness of life. But we don't want that bitterness to take over. We need to confine it.
And who knew that could be a lesson? I mean, really, who knew? So we need to take a brief commercial break, but we'll be right back.
People welcomed me and they knew the pain of the journey that we'd been on because they'd been there too.
Other Parents Like Me is an online community, peer-led, for parents with kids struggling with mental health and or substances.
It's a space that's safe. Feels like I can actually share what's going on.
We offer 15 daily support groups per week and live speaker talks on Thursdays, as well as a monthly expert panel.
We also have a resource hub that has a toolkit. This includes over 1,000 articles, podcasts. There's a glossary with the most recent and relevant terms. And we have a directory that's been vetted.
The overwhelming feeling when we're sitting in a meeting and I'm telling my story and I see others shaking their head, tears falling. They understand this roller coaster and they're along for the ride.
In a world full of chaos, she chose to anchor her story in hope. Through storms and silence, she found strength, and now she's inviting you to do the same. This isn't just a book, it's a lifeline. For every woman who's ever felt unseen, your healing begins here. Anchored in Hope. Available now.
And we are back with Andy. Andy is going to read part of his book, The Spiritual Gardener. So, Andy, it is all yours.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This is, I'm going to read you, 3 paragraphs. This is from chapter 1, the theme of which is taking action, encouraging people to garden, of course. Here's the book. We are overstimulated, pulled in all directions, unable to digest all the news and information that bombards us. We fight traffic, repetitively read and update our smart devices, and we rush here and there with quickened breath. Even if we possess all the material necessities of life, we may still suffer a longing. We lack something important. We are missing tranquility. Peace is nowhere to be found. We can find tranquility in the garden. What happens when we come home from a hard day's labor and we take a moment to water the vegetables? We observe nature at work and experience the joy of assisting it. We nurture and honor the miracle of creation. We revisit the completeness we felt when the vegetable bed was weeded and planted. We experience the beneficence of the garden even before we harvest it. If humanity succumbed to its current predicament after being born into a perfect world, what's to stop us from traveling in the opposite direction, heavenward, while here on earth? We can commence the redemption of humanity by noticing and caring for what is right around us.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it's true too. And I love how you managed to get the original title, that word that you said people wouldn't know, into that. I love that. You still got your way on that. I love that. I mean, honestly, people need to get back and working, because there's one of the things that you mentioned in the book. You said if we planted much of our vacant land, neighbors would encounter each other outside, because most of the time we don't know our neighbors. So you can meet and talk with the neighbors if we're planting this vacant land. Why do you think that is though?
Well, I think it's just the communal nature of nature in planting. One thing that I like to do here in the Pacific Northwest is when I'm doing my weeding, I come across little tiny seedlings. Here's an example. This is a cedar tree. And this cedar tree is probably about 2 years old. And so what I do is when I find a little tiny seedling, I'll put it in a pot. I put it in a protected area next to my shed. And a couple years later, I have a tree of this size. It's actually raining here today, even though we're in the middle of summer. So you might see a little water glistening on this healthy little cedar tree. And then when I go to give a talk, or if I'm at an art fair where they're in a booth selling books with some other self-published authors, I bring these and I like to give them away. You don't have to buy a book. Here's some free trees. And the important thing about trees is we want to plant the right tree at the right time in the right place. So if it's a tree that has a root that goes down, or a tree like this, I mean, this tree can live over 200-300 years and grow, way taller than your house. Mm-hmm. That could be an 80-foot or more tree. So, I like to give away the food I'm not eating. If I have a great zucchini year, bring the zucchini into the office. I have an apple tree. Like a lot of fruit trees, one person cannot consume all the tree's bountiful fruit at harvest time. So it's fun to bring some food to the food bank or to your friends or neighbors, relatives. It's fun to have the grandkids over and let them, eat peas right off the vine. So you ask the question, why is gardening and trees and nature, I mean, it's just part of our human condition. I mean, take a dog out in the woods and the dog is instantly happy running around. You can see that animal smiling. Well, humans are no different, really. And there was a famous rabbi, a Hasidic rabbi named Rabbi Nachman of Breslev. And he said that every human being should seek time with nature on a daily basis. And I agree with that. I think it's great. We are a species, human beings, that still have a lot of violence in us, but nature is very calming. And I think there's a big disconnect in our modern times where we're rushing here and there, just like I describe in chapter 1 of the book. And we need to breathe and we need to connect with nature, and we're part of nature. Yep. So when we connect with nature, we're not just connecting with our neighbors and family, but we're connecting with ourselves as well.
Now, at the beginning of each chapter, you either do a Bible verse or you do a quote. What was your motivation and how did you pick these? Because obviously there's tons of stuff that you could pick from. Was it quotes that you were like, there were something special to you, or was it something like you felt like it went with the chapter?
I felt like it went with the chapter. In my books, I have this one, The Spiritual Gardener. Then I have the sequel, The Spiritual Forest, Growing Vegetables, Planting Trees. And then I have since a series has to have 3, I have Grandy Let's Play about grandchildren and aging and family. So we're growing vegetables, trees, and growing grandchildren, growing the next generation. And all 3 books are similar, and each of them have 18 chapters. Each chapter has a quote ranging from the Baal Shem Tov to Groucho Marx at the start of the chapter. And every chapter has its own theme. So we talked about taking action, where I read the excerpt from chapter 1. Taking action, just going and deciding you're going to have a garden. But every chapter, we talked about horseradish, the theme of bitterness. We could talk about a chapter called TikTok Early Spring Gardener. So that chapter is about time management, because as a gardener, you have to get out there. If you live where I live, it's cold, it's wet, it's not nice, but you got to get the beds weeded. You got to get those first seeds if you want to have some nice peas and radishes and some of those bigger seeds that you can plant in the colder temperatures if you want to get them started at the right time, because timing is everything in gardening. So from a spiritual perspective, what is time management about? Time management is about the preciousness of each day. It's about the seasons. In gardening, the seasons are so important. You got to plant the right seed at the right time, otherwise you're not going to grow much. And in life, we also have seasons. So there's a lot of lessons in gardening in terms of time management. I'll give you another example. I have a chapter called Raspberry Jam. So I told you I grow a lot of raspberries, and we probably have a stretch of about 50 feet. So you have good years and bad years on the raspberries, but whether it's a good year or bad year, that's enough raspberry plant that you're going to have enough to make some jam. I mean, it's lovely to go out in the morning, take your dogs out, pick a few raspberries, shoo them away from the raspberries because they like them too. and bring in some raspberries to have for breakfast. Sprinkle some raspberries on a bit of cereal to enjoy with your coffee right off the vine. But you're going to have too many raspberries, so I talk about making raspberry jam. So in marriage, there is a division of labor. In partnership, there is a division of labor. So, it's not like partners, well, maybe some partners do, but I don't know many partners who okay, I'll do the dishes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and, I'll cook Tuesday and Thursday. The division of labor in marriage at its best happens naturally. So in my situation, I'm usually the one weeding, pruning, growing the raspberries. Maybe I get some help picking the raspberries. But the jam making is not something that I'm typically going to do. My wife is much better at making the jam. Now, let's say she has to go out of town. There's a wedding she needs to attend for a relative on her side of the family where, it wouldn't really make sense for me to come too. And she's gone, but the raspberries are ready for jam making. Well, in a pinch, I can make the jam. You can also freeze raspberries and then unfreeze them later and make the jam when it's convenient, by the way. You just put them on a cookie sheet and throw them in the freezer and then put them in a plastic bag once they're all frozen. And you're going to be able to use those for whatever purpose, whether you're going to make a smoothie or jam later, as you wish. But that chapter, Raspberry Jam, is about division of labor in marriage. I have a chapter called The Greenhouse. I told you about my greenhouse. Well, I ordered a kit. It's a 40-foot greenhouse, and it's a kit that came from England, and you get all the aluminum that gets screwed together, and then the glass got delivered locally. And what happened was, when the kit arrived, I had my friend David, who agreed to come over and help me do it. Having a best friend is the theme of this chapter. Well, I didn't notice when all the cardboard boxes with the aluminum pieces came that the directions corresponded to the letters on the boxes. I saw all the boxes. I opened up all the boxes because my friend was coming over. His time is precious too. So I wanted to get everything ready for the two of us to put it together. So all the boxes, the cardboard is in one pile. All the pieces are out on the floor of the driveway. And my friend comes over, and then I pick up the directions for the first time. And I realize, oh no, the directions correspond to the cardboard boxes, and I've thrown them all in a big pile. He said, Andy, don't worry. We aren't going to look at we were never going to look at those directions anyway. So I'm in a panic. I'm freaking out. And he's already assembling the greenhouse. And, I'm all thumbs with mechanical things. He's from Nebraska, where he lived on a farm, so he doesn't need directions. And sure enough, we got the frame all put together basically in an afternoon. And but that's what having a best friend is about. When you need a lift, the friend is there to help you out.
Yeah. But honestly, I think everybody would be just like you, wanting to get everything out of the box and put the boxes away, because I do the same thing. I open up something because I just want the boxes out of the way, because it's a lot easier. If something when things come in a big box, they've got a lot of stuffing and stuff like that. You just want the box out of your way so you can get about doing it. So I don't fault you one bit for throwing those boxes away.
I hear you. Yeah.
And also, you talked in the book about how gardening is very therapeutic. Like you can forget your resentments and your complaints, and you just become absorbed in working with your hands. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, take for example weeding. You're out there, you're on your knees, you're almost in a prayer-like position. You're making friends with that earthworm. You're listening to the birds. You're smelling the dirt. You're breathing the air. And weeding to me represents humility. And a little dose of humility now and then is what we human beings all need. The word humility actually comes from the Latin word humilitas. What is the literal translation of the Latin word humilitas? To be grounded. To do weeding, you don't need a college education. You don't need a PhD. You don't need a high school education. You don't need any education. You just need to slow down, get close to what you're growing, and clean out the weeds. And then, if you're lucky enough to find a little cedar seedling, dig it up very tenderly and put it in a pot and see if it'll grow.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
So our time is almost up. Is there anything that you want to maybe something we didn't touch on, but something that you would like to say or something you'd like to reiterate? That the floor is yours.
There's a very nice quote by a rabbi who existed at the time of the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, and I put it on a bookmark. His name was, and anyone who gets a book, I throw in my bookmarks too. Anyway, his name was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So to translate that, Yochanan would be like Jonathan. Ben Zakkai would be son of Zach. So Jonathan, son of Zachary. So the quote is this: Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai used to say, if you have a sapling in your hand and you are told the Messiah has come, first plant the sapling and then go and meet the Messiah. So this encompasses two wonderful thoughts. The first is the importance that spirituality gives to caring for nature. If you have a sapling in your hand, and even if you're told the Mashiach, the Messiah is coming, first plant the sapling. Give priority to caring for nature. And then the second idea that I really, really like, if you're on task and you're doing a good deed, you're doing a mitzvah, a good deed, you're planting a sapling, that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing. If you're doing a good thing, a good deed, and there's a blare of a headline, oh, something sensationalistic is happening. Here's the trumpet of the latest news. Don't get distracted. You're doing something good. You're doing something good for the universe, for the world, for your neighborhood, for your family. Stay on task. Get your good deed completed. Don't get pulled away from that good thing you're doing. You can get it done. So with those two thoughts, I feel pretty good about this interview, Melissa. Thank you for letting me preach a little bit and getting some ideas out there. If you're a nature person, a tree lover, a tree hugger, a gardener, or you have a gardener friend, both of these books are illustrated, and I highly recommend them to you.
I want to talk about that quote that you just said for your bookmark, because I think that's what the world needs now too, because we're so distracted about what's going on in the news and we get so downtrodden that if we just go out in nature and just feel at peace and be one with nature and feel what God's creation all around us. I mean, I think that's important for people to look at and stop worrying about all this external stuff going on.
Yeah, you've got to do what you can do. everybody can go and plant some trees. I mean, think about our cities and where the most deaths are during a heat wave. It's in the most impoverished areas. So there's cities that are planting trees to reduce what are called heat islands. You can join a group in your area to go out and plant trees as a community. There's Arbor Day. We have a holiday in Judaism called Tu B'Shvat, which is kind of like the Jewish Earth Day. So think about tasks you can do, things you can do for your family, your friends, your neighbors. You know, give somebody a jar of horseradish. Come on. How about some rat? You know, when people tell me that when we give them a jar of raspberry jam that my wife has typically made, it's so good. They hide it from the rest of their family.
I love that.
It's true. I'm not making, you can't make, I wouldn't have thought to say that. You can't make it up. I've been told that at least half a dozen times.
Yeah, I love that so much. And you also mentioned multiple times, and I want to reiterate this, make friends with an earthworm. Does that mean you like, oh, you have a conversation? You know, because a lot of people are going to take that literally and they're going to listen like, I don't like worms, but I think you mean like living in nature with them and kind of, you know, letting them do their own thing and you coexist with them. And a lot of people want to kill, like they see a bug or an insect or anything like that, they want to kill it, but you want to live, coexist with them, right?
Yeah, exactly. There are good bugs and bad bugs. Take slugs. In rainy Washington state, we have a lot of slugs. Slugs are great in the forest. They help decompose the leaves and create nutrients for the trees so the forest can be healthy. In the garden, we don't want slugs. So it all depends where that bug is and what the environment is. Earthworms are really, really good you can research that easily and see all the wonderful things earthworms do for you. A lot of people buy a lot of chemicals, and the chemicals sweeten the soil, but they're very bad for the earthworms. So we want to mulch. We really want to cut down on that food waste. Here in our community, we can now put food waste with yard waste that goes next to our garbage can. They pick it up once a week and they turn it into mulch that they then sell. So that's what I mean when I say make friends with an earthworm. You know, you're getting along with nature, you're connecting to nature, you're being part of creation. If we didn't have trees, we wouldn't have lungs for the earth, we wouldn't exist. If we didn't have earthworms, if we didn't have insects that pollinate all our plants, we wouldn't have a vegetable garden, we wouldn't have food to eat and nourish us. So the point is to make friends with all the creepy crawly things, Now, there are exceptions to that. I haven't figured out anything good a mosquito does for anybody ever.
No. And in the South, no, our mosquitoes are so big in the South.
Big ones. Well, Midwest too. Have you ever been to North Dakota? Biggest mosquitoes in the world in North Dakota.
I've never been there. And until now that I know, I don't think I want to go.
Anyway, it's been a real pleasure, Melissa. I've really enjoyed this interview today.
Okay, so I have your book, Grab the Spiritual Gardener. I have the link up on the thing, but I'm also going to link to your author's page. But where else can people find more about you?
Well, you can just Google me, and I do have my author page, andybecker.life, all one word. There's a nice bio of me on that behemoth of, the biggest bookstore in the world, Amazon. I'm all over Amazon or Goodreads, Barnes and Noble. Anywhere on the net you can find me. If you want an autographed copy of one of my books, go to my author page, and I'm happy to provide free shipping. I'll cover the tax as well. and get that book out to you promptly with an autograph and a bookmark.
Yeah, and I, for one, highly recommend this book because I would have never thought, well, you think about it, gardening, yes, it is spiritual. A lot of people say that that's how they go to church, is because they go out in the garden and just relax and calm down. But I never would have thought about writing a book that combined the two together. And I love the fact that you did that.
Well, I never would have thought of it either, but then I just did it, and that's the beauty of creativity. And then, so this book leads to that book, which led to this book. So it's funny how, one little pebble in the pond creates this wake, creates this ripple that leads to, they say in Judaism that one mitzvah leads to another. And it's true. You do one good deed, and the next thing you know, another good deed follows. It may not be your good deed. It may be something someone else does. And that's the way we can, improve our situation here with all our troubles and foibles and the human condition. That's what we need to focus on, just doing one good thing a day.
For sure. What is up next for you?
Well, I'm writing another satire. I wrote a satirical book that won a Mark Twain Award for satire and humor, and I have it here. If you like kind of a real page-turner novel, this is called The Kissing Rabbi, Lust, Betrayal, and a Community Turned Upside Down. It's based on an actual scandal. It's fiction, it's not reporting, but there was an actual scandal involving an ultra-Orthodox rabbi in Tacoma, Washington, and that's what inspired the book, along with revelations about Bill Cosby, who I thought was an icon and a hero who I grew up with, from I Spy to Fat Albert and, Dr. Huxtable, all those years. And I wanted to understand narcissism. I couldn't quite get, how could Bill Cosby do these horrible, horrible things? So I started reading about narcissism and Clinton and Trump and Cuomo, all these politicians and others who get in trouble. And then I had a front row seat to our own little scandal. I never knew exactly what happened, but it inspired me during the pandemic to write that book. And I was so gratified. I got a Mark Twain Award, first place for that book. And then after my Grandy Let's Play book on aging and grandparenting, I finally went back. I had a long career as a lawyer here in the Puget Sound. And I went back and looked at lawyer short stories that I wrote when I first started cutting back from my professional life and had time to write. And the problem with my lawyer short stories, they were all true. They were funny, but they were all true. So I've never been able to publish them. But I went back and I read a bunch of them. And from the experience of writing this novel, I thought I would write a satire about contemporary lawyering. And so that's what I'm working on now. It's possibly half done or 2/3 done. It's going through an initial copy editing with my favorite editor. His name's Ben Hirschberg. He lives in Tacoma. If anyone's looking for an editor, contact me. And I think it's going to be funny. And most of all, I think it's going to be very satirical and point out some of the critiques that lawyers are very deserving of. Because think of it. We don't build bridges the way we did 300 years ago. Yeah. Transportation, communication, medical science, you name it. We don't do anything like we did hundreds of years ago. We've advanced. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the legal profession or the clergy or prostitution, we're doing it all the same way we've done for hundreds of years. So my view is that the legal profession needs to, really make some advancements and get into modern times. So that's the purpose of writing this, plus as an entertainment. So that book is tentatively, of course, titles can change, but I call it Four Cases All at Once, The Paralegal Speaks. And it's the only lawyer book I know where the paralegal is the narrator. And this particular paralegal is cynical and a little bit potty mouthed, not a lot, but a little bit. And it's going to be funny. It's good, or at least that's what I'm trying to do.
So when is that book coming out?
Well, I think that's about a year away, if I'm realistic about it. Right now, I'm on summer hiatus. It's with the editor, and I'm just trying to harvest my string beans and enjoy my grandchildren.
Well, when it comes out, I would love for you to come back on, because I think that's one book that definitely people need to read.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Appreciate you.
All right, guys, I will put in the show notes everywhere you can find Andy, as well as finding his books. And Andy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing and writing The Spiritual Gardener, because it opened my eyes to a lot of things. I mean, I never, like you said, and I've said before in this interview, I never would have thought of putting the two together, but it just seems so right that they're together.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate our talk today. I hope if people pick up the book that they'll like it enough, they'll check out my other books too. They all kind of flow together, and they're good, just for calming purposes when it's time to go to bed. The chapters all stand alone, so you can read one chapter, put it back on your bedstand. I would say this one has more humor. This one's more meditative. And this one's just a lot of fun about aging, the fun of aging, the fun of being a grandparent. And thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Until next time, guys, I'm going to leave you with the thing that Andy said multiple times in this talk is go out and make friends with an earthworm. Until next time. Bye, guys.